Good morning, everyone. Isn't it beautiful out? We never know what might happen this afternoon. It might hail on us or storm, but it's beautiful right now. I'll talk about that later. The topic for today is, what is my role in times of change? And I just want to start off with a quote in Isaiah. Remember not the former things, nor consider the things of old. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. So, I don't know about you, but for anyone who has children in their life, anybody know what time it is? It's the end of school and summer vacation and graduation. It's a very exciting time for people with kids. And for myself, having started a school, it means even more to me. It's a very crazy time. This last week was our last week of school. Thursday we finished, had our last exhibition, had an ice cream party. Then we did an end-of-the-year camping trip on Friday and Saturday. We got to the campsite and started sprinkling on us. So I threw 3 tents together, and it's like a world record time. And then it started hailing on us, and then the wind came and started blowing away a few tents a few times. Very exciting. But that's like, for the kids, there'll be that memory, right? Remember that one time we went camping and it was hailing on us? Fun. But for me, it's almost like a 180-degree shift in my focus and in what I'm spending my days on. And I almost don't know what to do with myself, although I have lots of ideas of what I can do. But I feel like I'm right on the brink of almost being done with school. I still have so many things to do to wrap up the year. Enrollment things and cleanup things and standardized testing things to finalize and all that. And yet I feel summer calling me forward. I just want to dive into my garden and into the mountains and do all those summery things. I feel kind of pulled backwards and forwards at the same time. And as much as the end of the year is a relief in a lot of ways, I'm also sad. We had a really awesome school year, and we had really beautiful and memorable moments. And those are finished now. They're not coming back. We have we have people going into high school, and we don't offer high school. We have people who moved at the end of the year. We have people who are going to different schools next year. And so we can't get these moments back. Even if we tried next year, we won't recreate the same things that we experienced this year. So it's a time of change. And so that's my experience with this week in particular. But I'm sure that in your own life, there are things changing. I don't know if this is like a big time of change, but regardless, nothing ever stays the same, right? Things are always shifting, moving, adjusting in our lives. And it's funny because as I'm a little anxious around change, but at the same time, a month and a half ago, I remember we just felt like nothing was happening, and we were just waiting, and we were stuck in the waiting. We were waiting to find out if the house would become available to us. I was waiting to find out if all these people who had done tours in our school were going to enroll. We were waiting to find out about grants, and we had done everything in our physical capability to do, and there's really nothing else left to do but wait. And I didn't like waiting. And now things have changed, and I don't like change. Aren't we fickle sometimes? People are funny. We don't like waiting, and we don't like change. We can get stressed and dissatisfied so easily. But I was thinking, that's why we really need God, isn't it? We really need God to ground us, and we really need our relationship with God to carry us through the waiting, through the changes. And we need to have this trust in God that we don't need to hold on to the past. And even if we don't know what the future holds, we can trust that God is working in our lives for our good. God is creating something. Maybe we don't perceive it. We're not always the most aware. But God is doing something new in our life, and He wants to make a way for us in the wilderness and to spring rivers forth in the desert. You might also be familiar with this quote. I love it. I probably use it 6 times a year. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. God has said this in many different ways all throughout the Bible. God's promises to us. They're there, and it's really up to us to receive them, to accept it, to really believe it. This is a quote from our founder, Reverend Moon. Once you have faith and are committed to the fact that in your relationship to Father, you are as a son or daughter to Him as your Father, then nothing can stop you. Once this realization comes into true reality, it is so very real to you. It depends on your real feeling, the depth of reality that you feel towards Father. This determines your own heaven. So I think what it's saying here is that if our relationship with God is not just a belief or just a concept, but if it's tangible, if I know that God is my Father, just as much as I know that my physical parents are my parents, this can change our perception of our experience in this world. We can create our own heaven through our relationship with our heavenly parent. Heaven is determined not as much by pearly gates and streets paved with gold, right? That's a description of heaven that many people think of. But it's not determined by that as much as it is determined by relationships of love and where our heart is at. Yes, the ultimate goal is kingdom of heaven on earth, where every person experiences being born into love and living in love, and then when they're passing on, returning to the love of God. But there's got to be like an in-between between where we are now and that, right? And it begins with each one of us creating our own heaven. And heaven in our own life is not about having the best house. As much as I'm like having a beautiful 5-acre property and my bees and my garden is heaven, that's not it either. Sorry, Adonia. No, heaven in our own life begins with real relationships of love that are defined by our real relationship with God. Another change, another big shift that's happening right now is in our whole kind of church structure. You may have heard that after the big blessing and holy celebration in Korea, True Mother called together all the continental leaders and directors of our movement and changed things up. Very exciting. So Dr. Young, who was our continental director and who was here just a couple months ago, will now be working in Korea, going back. President Naokimi will be serving in some other capacity, which we don't know what that is yet. And Damien Dunkley, who was our president before, is coming back as both our continental director and our president. It's also been announced that we'll be shifting from like a 5 sub-regional system to a system of larger churches and smaller churches. Now, what does that actually mean? I don't know. We'll find out. This reminds me of this quote from Daniel. "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding." But I think what this is saying is that whatever changes we go through, let's use our wisdom. Let's not just try to understand things or understand details, but let's gain true knowledge and true wisdom through the changes. So yes, what do these changes mean in practice? We'll have to play the waiting game. Yay, waiting. And find out. And then we'll have to face the changes, and then we'll be stressed by the changes, maybe. But actually, I'm not so stressed about the changes. For one thing, we have our vision. We have our purpose. And that won't change. And I also trust our true mother. I think she's really wise. From what I understand, and I'm not at these meetings in Korea, I don't know everything, but from what I understand, she is really wanting to know what the real situation is of our members, of our families, of our communities. She's wanting to eliminate the number of levels that communication has to go through for her to understand what's happening. And she's really considering how to structure things so that when she passes on, then we're fundamentally set up for success. And so this may not be the final iteration of that, but I think it's moving in that direction. This is a quote from our founder, Reva Moon. "When you believe in something, when we talk about this faith, it is but something in which we believe, something invisible. But when we actualize the ideal of God, we are a visible God. We are the incarnation of God, and we want to express God in ourselves." So, when we're faced with change, or when we're stuck in waiting, I think the important thing is to ask myself, what is my role in this change? Because actually, I'm the variable here. As much as change is changing, it's actually pretty constant, right? What do they say? Only 2 certain things in this world are death and taxes. So we can be confident that things are going to change. So that's actually a constant. Change is a constant. And God is a constant. God is unchanging. God is eternal, absolute, unchanging, unwavering. So if change is always going to be happening, and God is unchanging, then I'm the variable in this equation. What will I do in this relationship to a changing world and an unchanging God? How will I perceive it? How will I act in this? When my faith in God is just something conceptual, then I'm more likely to be buffeted, right, by the winds of change. I'll be more likely to live a reactionary life. Oh my gosh, it hailed on my tomato plants. My summer's over. I'm worried about this. Or, oh my gosh, I got the job. Everything's going to be perfect now. But then something else happens, right? It's like if we say we believe in God, but our faith is just a concept, it's just something that we say we believe, then it doesn't actually provide real benefits to our life. But when we actualize the ideal of God, when our relationship with God is as real as our own relationship with our own parents, then we gain the power to act in our life as God would act if he had a physical body. We become, and I know it sounds kind of sacrilegious, but we can become an incarnation of God. We want to express God in ourselves. So when my relationship with God is concrete, I become a manifestation of God. I become the difference, right, in my life. Rather than being affected by the change, I am inheriting God's absolute, eternal, unchanging nature. If I know my purpose, if I know my goals, then the things that happen around me don't make as much difference. I'm really grateful that I can confidently say I've discovered what my purpose in my life is. I still get stressed. I still don't like to wait. I still get stressed by change. But when it comes down to it, it's not going to change my next step. I might get frustrated for a little bit, but I know what I'm going to do next. I know that I need to maintain love in my family and grow love in my family. I know that I want that love to envelop the people around me. I want my relationships to be authentic, and I want God to be present in my relationships. And everything else is just like a manifestation of that. So if I know what my purpose is, then it might look different depending on the changing situations, but I still know what direction I'm going, and I still know my next step. So what about you? What is your goal? What is your purpose? And if you don't know yet, that's okay, because that's a really exciting journey to be on. But you might find that it helps in times of change or in times of waiting. When we actualize the ideal of God, we are a visible God. We are the incarnation of God, and we want to express God in ourselves. I think that when we come into contact with these people who are living in their purpose, it can make a profound difference in our life. Now, I'm not saying that I know what this feels like to be that person, and I'm not that person all the time. Okay, don't worry. But I do know what it feels like when I am walking in my purpose, and I know what it feels like to not be overwhelmed by circumstances. And I know that when I'm in those times, I have been able to do big things that have made a difference to other people. You can probably think of people in your life who were just really big people, and not because they had amazing skills, and not because they could speak really well, but because for you in that moment, they represented God. They represented God's love that could overcome resentment, or they could overcome a difficulty, or they could overcome grief. I'm sure that each one of you could think of somebody in your life who was like, wow, I met God in this person, because they were walking in their purpose. They were a big person because God was in them. So that, for now, that's where I'm settling at. That is my role in times of change. I can't always affect the circumstances or change them. And God is always eternal, absolute, and unchanging. So which one am I going to resemble more? I'm going to resemble God. I want to be absolute, eternal, and unchanging in my purpose. And if I walk in my purpose, then I can do big things. That is my short, brief beginning of summer message for you. But I hope that there's something here for you as you go through your change. I know GPA is finishing up for the year soon, right? Yeah, big changes coming for you guys too. So I'm excited to see where God leads you. For all you parents and grandparents out there where your children are going, maybe heading into school next year for the first time, or going into summer break, or graduating. It can be a kind of a shifty time. But I hope that for your family, you can represent God to your family, be this unchanging, absolute, eternal expression of God's love. And whatever other changes, I don't know what changes are happening in all of your life, but it's something to remember. This is going to keep happening, right? The change is going to keep coming, whether it's with your family, or whether it's with school, or with work, or the weather. It's going to keep changing. That's a constant. God is a constant. So what am I going to do? Because I'm the variable in how this turns out. All right, please join me in prayer. Heavenly Parent, good morning. Thank you so much for a beautiful sunny day, and for everybody who is able to be here with us this Sunday. God, we really feel your love and presence when we just take a minute to absorb it. It's always there for us. It never stops, never changes. Even in our lowest points, middle of the night, middle of a rainstorm, doesn't matter. Your love is always available to us if we are ready to receive it. And even though sometimes we're riding the waves of life, or it gets windy out and things feel uncertain or crazy, I pray that we can just remember where we come from, and that we really are just an expression of you, and we have the ability to also be unchanging, to keep walking forward in our purpose, to keep walking forward with your love. Please guide us through the changes that we face now. Please guide us through this summer. And we just want to keep inviting you into our lives and into our relationships. We love you, and I offer this prayer in my name, Michael and Adonia Hentrick, a Blessed Angel family. Amen and adieu. Thank you.